Hi, welcome. I'm Roxanne with Super Doodle Girl, and today I'm going to teach you how to do the bell-bottom lettering style. So we'll start out with just drawing the word mindful. And I say drawing because it's not your handwriting, and you're going to draw it from one edge of the page to the other. I'm working on a 5x8 sheet of watercolor paper. And then we'll come back and we're going to somewhat thicken the downstrokes, but really emphasize the bottom connector. So you see how I'm connecting those, really emphasizing, and then on those ascenders, also making it kind of a bell to balance out the descender and the F. Also that ascender and the L, and then a nice bell on the last one. So notice I did this and I'm kind of sketching these in. If you're doing it, you'll probably use a lighter pressure than I did here. I wanted you to be able to see the lettering clearly on the screen. So once you're satisfied with that, I'm going to be using a Sharpie to outline my letters. And as I'm doing this, I'm making any adjustments that I need to make. And notice how on the top of that bell, it's very narrow as it joins to the next letter. So you can see that on that D. And again, big bell on the bottom. And notice I made a correction there on that lower F. I wanted a little bit more emphasized bell. Having to fit that U in there. And then finally, nice big bell on the L. And I'm going edge to edge for this creation. Next, I'll take my eraser and remove any extra marks, cleaning up my work. And then the next step, it will be to color in all of your letters. I really like nice bold black lettering. And as you're doing this, you're also going to be looking at those curves. You can make adjustments as you fill in the letters as well. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up this portion of the video. And so you can pause the video and then come back after you have all of your letters filled in, and then we'll get started on the background. And so now finishing it out with the L and then that lower bell on the L. And so you see as all of the letters come together, really that emphasis on the shape of the connector at the bottom, giving it a nice whimsical look to it. And this one, I'm using the Canson watercolor paper. And so what I'll be able to do is I'm going to take my Tombow markers for the background. And before I hop to the background, I'm taking my black glaze pen and outlining the letters just to give it a little bit smoother edge than I could give with my Sharpie. It was an older Sharpie, so it's kind of didn't give me that sharper edge that I wanted. So I'll speed through this part as well. So pause it if you want to do any outlining of your letters. You can outline them in black or even a contrasting color if you want to do a silver or a different color of outline. That would look nice. And now that we have our letters outlined, it's time to add the background. As I mentioned, we'll be using the Tombow markers. And so the first, I'm just adding a little line of yellow at the top. And then I'm going to take my orange and not fully outline, but just do like a little pop of color a little bit closer to the letters. That's all you do. That's all the color I'm going to add to it. And now I'm taking my round, I think it's probably a number 6 watercolor brush, and I'm placing water on top of all every place I put orange. So it has time to activate the marker. And then I'm just bringing more water in and starting to move the water around. So you notice that the actual mark that you made with the marker becomes very faint. And keep adding more water. If yours isn't moving around, add a little more water to it. I like to do this if I can't take all my watercolors with me or even the travel set. I'll just grab my Tombows and one of my small Canson tablets. And so then I've added the water to the yellow, and then you'll see I can start to blend the yellow and the orange together. If your color's not moving, go ahead and add a little more water to it. You can see mine is very wet. Someone asked me if I do wet on wet or wet on dry, and this one is just adding water to that background. You can see how wet it is as I'm drying with my heat gun to speed it up. You can literally see it moving around. And so that's going to give me some really interesting watermarks that I like for a little more texture in the background. And then we're going to move to the kind of the bottom. And notice I did a very fine line of the orange. So imagine the orange going behind the letters. And then I brought a thicker line of the fuchsia and then the deep purple at the bottom. One of the things that you'll notice, the thinner your line, it tends to kind of stay on the paper. It's a little more visible. That's one of the things that I had forgotten. So if you're doing this, I would go ahead and add a thicker orange line and then just blend it more with that fuchsia. And you can see as I'm working to move the fuchsia around, see how once it turns, you add the water, it starts to blend a little more easily. And I have noticed that some of the Tombows, they're a little more staining than the others are. So what we're getting on this bottom half is that fuchsia is not moving around as well. One of the things you can do is not draw all of the fuchsia and just put a little marker on and immediately wet it so that the paint doesn't have, that the pigment doesn't have time to sink into that paint to stain it. So I'm getting a little bit of that same thing happening with the purple. And this is actually the piece that you see posted in the blog post. So you're seeing the process in between. And so what am I going to do to kind of cover that up? So actually, I'm going to just dry this and see what happens to it. I'm drying it, you can see how wet the paper was. And so you see it start to move around and it starts to create those lines where the water's drying. And so that kind of adds to it and you don't notice those others as much. And because this is a process, kind of mindful piece, I'm just playing with it. And so that's what I encourage you to do. If this is your first time to do it, it's not going to be perfect and polished. So it's one of the things that we like to do is your creative practice is just to play with it. So now I'm kind of looking, I was like, what do I do? So I'm going to add a little tiny border. And the decision to do the border, it really is, look at that horizontal purple line on the bottom. I wanted something to work with that. And so now adding that black, even though it's over and you still see it a bit, it draws more of the eye into the words and away from the background. So it gives our words a little grounding there in the piece. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. I'll be recording more videos and blog posts that go along with the 100-day project or just different things that I'm working on as people ask me questions. I'll put together some helpful videos for you guys.